Innovation Showcase. We have an awesome lineup for you today. We're really excited to hear what our teachers have to say. If you could mute your mic and turn off your camera so that our presenters' awesome is front and center, that would be great. We are recording the session. We post them so that folks can watch them afterwards, archived, because Friday afternoons are really hard, and I totally understand that. But we have been working on teacher clarity. And so we just launched a module yesterday in our elementary blended course and our middle and high school community course. And the focus has been on teacher clarity. And so we were looking for some examples of actual UCPS teachers that had a really great process or a really great idea, or were doing some really awesome things that had to do with clarity in their classrooms. And so we found them. It was very easy. We found them and we asked them here to share with you all just kind of some basics. Usually I suggest to our presenters that they share what it is that they're doing, how it's impacting kids in their classroom, and how they learned how to do it. And so lots of times people say, well, I just taught myself, and that's totally okay. Really, this is just the idea is to share really great practices that teachers are doing with other really great teachers in our county. And so what's going to happen is each one of them is going to start. We're going to start with Miss Regina Dill, and she is a math teacher at South Providence. And then we're going to move on to Cynthia Eford, who is a virtual teacher at Sardis Elementary. I was hesitating because I wanted to make sure you were virtual, but you are virtual this year. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yes, I am.
Good. And Hannah Park, who happens to also be virtual. No virtual requirements to be a virtual teacher to participate in the Innovation Showcase. We just happen to have two very awesome virtual teachers, or three, right? Miss Dill is teaching virtually and face-to-face at the same time, but Hannah is from Porter Ridge Elementary, and she's doing some awesome work with her virtual students there. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to allow Regina to take over, and I will try and help manage your time, Miss Dill, and let you know kind of how you're doing. I will also help manage the chat in case you get any questions. I will let you know.
Because you all can read that. So I got asked to share my checklist that I came up with for this school year. And I did a lot of professional development between March and August, because that's basically what I had a lot of time to do. And one of the things that I did was, I think it was North Carolina State, or was the Friday Institute, did a thing on virtual learning. And it was a long course, but one of the things that I really got out of it was the idea for this checklist. I'm not even sure that they talked about it specifically, but it was all the ideas they talked about together that led me to this checklist. So this is what our lesson plans look like for middle school math, because I want to show you kind of how it all fits together from the teacher perspective. So we plan out everything that we're going to do except the checklist until the day before, because sometimes things can change and the checklist is very much what's happening that day. So this is where it goes into our lesson plans so that we then can share it with the kids. And this is what a checklist actually looks like. And if you look on the left, they can actually check those boxes as they get each thing done. And it's kind of like an agenda. It's a Google agenda. But the thing that I really liked about this idea was that we could assign point values to each of the activities, which is all the way on the right, so that the kids could realize that each thing did impact their grade and each thing had a weight in their grade. And then another thing that came out of that Friday Institute virtual learning was an idea to have some sort of check-in every day. So that yellow box is what you're going to see next. It's a very short check-in form that we do every day. And it looks like this. And the first three questions are always the same. Your name, how are you doing today, and is there anybody you need to talk to? And then the fourth question is usually some sort of little math question just to get them thinking. And some days we talk about them in class and some days we don't. And Mr. Mahaffey and I were just planning out the next 5 weeks this morning, and they're going to be bad math jokes for like the last couple of weeks of that. So we're looking forward to that. Good bet. They just have to say, is it funny or not? And you know how middle schoolers are. We'll see. So how does a checklist work for the kids? So this is our Canvas homepage. This is for both me and the other math teacher. And all they have to do is click on whatever day of the week it is down at the bottom, and they will get automatically taken to a link that makes them make a copy of the checklist. And the checklists are also connected through Canvas. So it's kind of like they're archived. Like if I showed my whole Canvas thing, all the checklists all the way back to August would be in there by the weeks. And the part that I kind of added was I feel like our kids, and probably all kids, work better if they know they're going to hear really quickly about how they did. So this teacher feedback feature is something that I kind of added where, so the process is the kids come in, they click on the day of the week in the Canvas homepage, and they're filling out their checklist as they go along through class. And you can see at the top, they're going to share it with the 3 teachers. And then during my planning time, I actually go back and add feedbacks and their point values for how they did that day in class. And, you know, South Providence, I have 12 students. I would say the caveat to this communication method is that I'm not sure I could do it with 75 students at a regular middle school. Like this, I might be able to do it in a different way, but for our kids, I really like this. And for kids maybe that need a little extra support at a, you know, a traditional middle school, this might be a good way to do it. So I'll put all the feedbacks, things that I would like them to know that I thought about how they did and their total. And then they have their own folder in my Google Drive where I put it in a folder that's shared with them, and they can keep track of everything that they've done. So my kids I've had since August have checklists since August in their folders, and they can go back and see how they did and see their feedbacks and check it whenever they want. So does anybody have any questions about anything? I did that kind of fast.
See, I just did that to make you feel better, Regina.
Oh, thank you. I was
You're
like,
welcome.
oh my gosh, did my internet go out while I was talking?
So awesome. The reason that I really like it, and the reason that I'm so glad that you kind of came to share, is because explaining to students or clearly defining what the tasks are and what success looks like is really important, right? And so important that we added this to our professional development modules that we're building now, so that now you know what you have to accomplish in order to complete the module. And so I think it's just nice and easy and clear for students to know these are the things I got to do today, right? Anybody else have any other comments or questions?
I love the idea of feedback. I think that's really neat that each kid gets their own individual feedback, and props to you for doing that. I love that idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, everything that could go wrong during that did go wrong. My work buddy Max decided to lose his mind, so sorry about that.
That is okay. That is okay.
And the one thing I didn't say that you asked me to say was the kids love it. The kids love it. And it's especially good for the kids that can't get to class. If they're at home, they can't get to class right when class is happening, but they share the checklist so we know they have something to do and they will get to it later. So that's been the really good thing about it. It's been a nice, fast, reliable way for kids to check in on their math work.
And I think you're selling yourself short. I think that you would probably find a way, and you said this, but I think you would find a way to do this if you had a larger number of students. It might not be exactly the way you're making it work now, but I think you see the value in it now, right?
Right.
And would figure out how to kind of make something very similar happen for a larger number of students.
Well, I know that we're going to keep doing it at South Providence. It's very doable for us. So
well, good. Good. Awesome. So thank you so much. If nobody else has any questions for Regina, We will move on to the next. All right, Cynthia,
All
you're
right.
up.
All right. All right. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right. Well, welcome to my first grade virtual classroom. So whenever I'm thinking about teacher clarity, learning expectations, and student success in the first grade virtual world, it has definitely I've had to change my thinking this year totally from the way that I would teach first grade if I were in the building. With first grade, it's very hands-on, thinking about student engaging, making activities that are engaging for them, growing students academically with the most impact starting where they are. Those are things that would be my goal if I were in the classroom. So thinking about virtual, the end goal doesn't change, but the way I go about doing it has definitely changed. So today, I'm so honored to have the opportunity to share with you guys just some of my process and how I have kind of evolved in virtual learning to have the greatest impact for each one of my students. So when I took on this first grade class in October, and I was really going in it thinking, like, what am I used to? What do I normally do in the classroom? And so, we've been using the workshop model for so long. And then when I tried to kind of implement that model in a virtual setting, it was very difficult having 16 first graders doing a mini lesson, and turning and talking wasn't working out. Just everything that goes along that, students are used to in the classroom setting, it just didn't quite work for my group of students. And so that led me to start thinking about how am I going to meet the learning needs of all 16 of my students in a virtual environment as first graders. And so the starting point for that was really getting to know my students in two ways. First and foremost, building relationships with all of my students. That really drives everything that I do in motivating students. And so, really getting to know them personally, and also, just making sure that I'm rewarding the students for their hard work as well. And so some things I've kind of implemented, we use Class Dojo in my classroom. And so they earn Class Dojo points for a variety of different things, showing up to groups on time, turning in their work on time, being on task, being a kind friend to each other, waiting patiently to speak, like all those kinds of things. And so those are some things that were kind of like the starting point of, just really making those relationships with students and also building their motivation. Academically, I needed to get a clear picture of what they could do and where did I need to go with them. And so I did assessments middle of the year, iStation and iReady. Sardis, we do iReady for literacy and for math. And so those were the ones that are the required to do. But I also took it like a step further and did some further investigating because I wanted to get a whole picture of my students beyond just, the computerized assessment. And so for each one of my students, I did a phonemic awareness assessment, a phonics assessment with them. We read nonsense words. I got their reading level. For math, I did an assessment with them of just a variety of different types of math problems that, went along with standards that we have covered so far and performance tasks as well. And so once I compiled all of that data, it was like, okay, I have a very wide range of needs of my students. And so that led to me really just totally revamping my schedule and creating a plan for each student. So these are two examples of what I did. One for math and one for phonemic awareness and phonics. I also did this for reading and for writing as well. And so I let the data that I collected drive my instruction for each individual student for the rest of the year. So I created the scope and sequence of what did these students need the most to be able to grow the maximum amount of growth academically between now and the end of the year. So each one of my groups are differentiated based off of where they were in January when I did those assessments. And so if you were to come to any of my math groups, you're going to see something different being taught, maybe within the same standard, but the level of complexity may be different. The way I go about teaching it may be different because it's driven based off of the students that are in that group. And so once I kind of created this plan for each student, then that led me to creating my new schedule. So this is kind of what my schedule looks like on a weekly basis. So Monday through Wednesday, I do literacy small groups with my students for 30 to 40 minutes. During those literacy groups, we're working on phonemic awareness, we're working on phonics, we're taking a brain break. We are working on a targeted reading skill. We work in writing in that group as well. And then for my math small groups, we are, there's a targeted problem solving part of that small group, and then whatever the targeted math skill that we're working on for that day. And again, these small groups are created based off of the assessment data that I looked at, as well as making those groups aligned to priority standards. So every group is different and they drive what we do. It's all based off of where they are and the next steps in growing them to, the next complexity in the standards. For Thursday and Friday, I do conferences with students on Thursday and Friday. So they are 30-minute conferences. I meet with each student each week one-on-one for 30 minutes. And during that 30 minutes, that's where I can really get targeted for that student's literacy and math needs. And I will say none of this can happen without the parents being on board. And so I am so blessed to have such a great group of parents that are committed to this schedule and are making sure that their students are logging in every day. And I have great attendance each day for each one of my groups and also my conferences as well. On Thursday and Friday, I also have my assistant on those days, and she works in targeted groups as well on writing skills. And she meets with a group for building vocabulary, and she also meets with every student as well for iReady. So they get on with her to complete their iReady work each week as well for reading and for math. And so with the schedule being built, that's consistent and that will remain until the end of the year. What can change is what group the student is in based off on how they're growing academically. So that leads to the fun part, the student engagement and assessing their learning. So these are just some ways that I engage them in our groups and in their asynchronous learning as well. So I make sure that I have anchor charts just like I would if I were in the classroom, but they are usually a Google slide or a Jamboard. They have exit tickets that they work on. Those are just some examples of like a social studies exit ticket, a word work exit ticket, and then also they bring their whiteboards and markers to every group, and that's a easy way for me to get some formative assessment as well. They do centers on Canvas, and so that was one of the things that I really missed about being in a first grade classroom, is them being able to do center work, because that's so much fun, and that's where they really start getting practice and growing those skills. And so each day they have a literacy center and a math center that they work on through Canvas. Sometimes the center is directly through Canvas and there aren't any additional materials. But sometimes there are things that I have given them that they need to use for that center for that day. And then one of the last things that my parents have really appreciated is once a month I do a materials pickup for students. Actually, today was our materials pickup, and that was a picture of my materials that parents were coming to pick up today. And so they get 4 folders, one for reading, phonics, one for math, one for writing, one for science and social studies. And within those folders are paper copies of things that they're going to work on throughout the next month for assignments. Because first graders, they need to have that pencil in their hand, and they need to start, really getting that muscle memory with forming their numbers and forming their letters. So that was a way to kind of balance the technology, end of my students not always being, on the computer for doing everything. And so my parents have been on board with, coming once a month to pick up those materials. They pick up baggies of books so kids can have books in their hands, reading actual books, flipping pages. So all of this is just kind of what I do to keep my students engaged, and also to be able to assess their learning. And it guides, my direction for what I do with them each week.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Does anybody have any questions for Miss Eford? Lori has wrote in the chat that she loves the idea of centers in Canvas, and she's impressed with the material pickup.
Oh, good.
I'm impressed with the data that you've collected and the action you've taken based on it. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
All right, Hannah, are you ready to roll? Maybe. All right.
Yes.
Hannah is here.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's all you. Take it away.
I'm Hannah Park. I'm the 3rd grade virtual teacher at Porter Ridge Elementary, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the power of storytelling in order to provide teacher clarity. So I'm going to start off with a story about myself. I was born and raised in Union County, and I graduated from CATA. And when I graduated, I moved off to college, and about 2 months into the first semester, I got a phone call from my parents, and they were like, "Hey, we're moving on down to North Myrtle Beach. Come and check out the new house whenever you get a chance." And I was like, "Excuse me, you're doing what? You're selling my childhood home? You didn't tell me anything about this?" And so I did. I went down and checked it out, and I fell in love with it. I spent all of my summers there from college, and I moved there after I graduated. And so I spent my first year of teaching at a 4th grade classroom in Myrtle Beach. And I told myself, I will never move back to Union County, and I will never, ever teach kindergarten. Those are just 2 things that Hannah Park is never going to do. And then all in 1 year, my high school sweetheart proposed to me, and I moved back to Union County, and I got a job. It was the only job I could find, teaching kindergarten. And when I tell you that this was me driving home from school every day, I'm not kidding. It was rough. But with that said, it was also one of the most valuable years of teaching that I've had so far in my career. And the reason I say that is because it really brought to life to me the power of storytelling. And it makes perfect sense because if you think about it, for hundreds and thousands of years, that's how humans have captivated audiences and spent their time together, is through storytelling. And so in kindergarten, we used Lucy Calkins, and I don't really use it a lot. I teach third grade now, and I don't really use it as much anymore, but I've taken a lot of what she does with me, and I apply it not only to reading, but to math and writing and all other subjects. And so I really love how she starts out all of her lessons with a connection where she grabs the kid's attention and then she names the teaching point. Because if you think about engagement, especially in this virtual format, it used to be in the classroom, Mary Sue has new light up shoes and she keeps banging her feet and that's taken away from your lesson. But now I'm competing against the brother playing the oboe in the other room, or the mom who sets her child beside the new litter of puppies to learn for the day. So I'm having to fight all these things for engagement, and it's been rough and it's hard. And so I've really kind of gone back to when I was teaching kindergarten, just the importance of, as soon as I start my lesson, I want to wow them by acting crazy, acting silly, using gestures, facial expressions, and getting their attention. Then as soon as I have them right where I want them, I'm explicit and direct with what I want them to learn, what the point is for the lesson that I'm about to teach them. Because let's be honest, they're not going to listen to me the whole 15, 20 minutes of my mini lesson. That's just not realistic. So the idea is to just start every lesson with, it could be like an anecdotal story from something that happened in your classroom, but a lot of times I do personal connections, and it's really great because it also allows that relationship building to take place. And so the whole point is just to kind of make it like an introduction to your lesson, and it's meant to be fun and bring the kids along and activate their prior knowledge. And so an example of this would be, if I'm wanting, the other day, this was my lesson a couple weeks ago, we were talking about inferencing. And so I started out with, you guys, my best friend Kayla called me yesterday. You know Kayla. She was so upset. Her little brother got hurt in his baseball game, and he is laid up in bed with ice packs on both of his knees. He can't walk. He's in so much pain. And as she was telling me all this, I just kind of was thinking, wouldn't you think like his arm or like his elbow would be the thing that hurts, because it's like baseball, right? And I was thinking about it, and then I remembered that in baseball, there's a position of someone called a catcher, and their job is to literally squat down the whole game and catch balls that the batter misses. And so I asked Kayla, I was like, Kayla, I'm kind of inferring here that your brother must be a catcher. Is he a catcher in baseball? She was blown away. How did you know that? And I said, I was just reading between the lines, just inferred it. And then right when I have their attention is whenever you jump in and you say, today and every day, I want to teach you that as you're reading, you have to pay really close attention to those clues and kind of read between the lines so that you can draw inferences from the information in your text. And then keep going from there and go into the lesson and give them a chance to try it. And so this is just a really good opportunity for them to see how not only can they apply this when they're reading independently, but they can, if you make them feel like you're giving them tricks. I love teaching persuasive writing, because teaching them like how to get what they want. Whenever you teach them things like that, they love it and they're way more engaged with it. And so another example that I love to do is talk to them about how sometimes when I pick up a book that I haven't read in a long time, I don't remember what was going on. And I was watching TV the other night, and my favorite show, Grey's Anatomy, was on, but I was so upset because I couldn't remember what happened in the last episode. And you know what came on the screen? There was this man that came on and he said, previously on Grey's Anatomy. And all these memories started rushing back into my head. I remembered that Derek and Meredith had broken up and he had a new girlfriend. And so today I want to teach you that great readers, they don't just pick up their book and just start reading right away, right where they left off. They remind themselves of the key details in the story before they pick back up with their reading, so that they can make sure that they're really connected with their books, and then they can carry on. And so I just really love the idea of storytelling, because it creates a lot of dialogue between myself and the kids. And the other day I dressed up as like a detective, and the whole rest of the day, and even this past week, weeks later, they were still talking about it, still talking about making sure that they look for the red herring whenever they're reading a mystery book. And so it just really kind of seals the deal for them, and it makes them almost connect with it more in a way. So yeah, it kind of defines how they can use it in their own real world situations and in their reading. And so, like I said, I'd really like to do this not only in reading, but with math too, just opening up with something about me that's personal and we can connect, and just something fun that kind of gets their attention away from the cute little puppies sitting over there and onto me. Tough competition for sure.
So awesome. I was totally tuned into all of your stories. And I imagine that your students by the end of the school year, like, you should totally, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I think it would be awesome, especially because you're virtual. You should like just bring your friend Kayla into the meeting, because I bet you that they have all these preconceived notions about Kayla and who she is, especially if you talk about her, like, or your dog or someone in your family. Yeah. I imagine that they have all these wild ideas about these people that you talk about, whether they are founded or not. You clearly are exaggerating in sometimes, but I think.
Well, and that's the thing about the stories, is you can make a lot of it up. Like sometimes I can't think of anything that's happened in my real life to go along with my teach points. So, you can be whoever you want to be to these children.
Totally. My husband's a math teacher, and he tells everyone when they're converting fractions about how I'm a terrible cook. And all like how I, converted fractions wrong and I made terrible dinner. And like, once in a while they see me and they're like, oh, is that the bad cook? Like, yeah, it is. Thanks, guys. But I'll be whatever it means, whatever they need me to be in order to help them learn that math. The cool part, Hannah, I think, is that your students absolutely know why they're learning what they're learning when you are doing this, right? Like, no doubt that we could say, why are you doing this today? What is the purpose of this practice? And those students can tell you, because you've done this very clear layout of what they're going to learn and why they need to know how to do it. That's pretty awesome. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Hannah? Lori, I can't believe you don't have a comment.
Well, I can't get my thing unmuted. It's driving me nuts. Hannah,
you were just making us feel better.
No. I couldn't get the thing to unmute. I agree that I've seen it work with adults as well. Stories work with no matter who you're dealing with. And I mean, the best church services I've been in is when the pastor told a story that connected me to what he was trying to teach me. So, hey, I love that idea.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, we love it. We love it. So Dearly said, great ideas, and storytelling as a connection to the previous lesson is great. Awesome. Well, it is 2:34, friends. We are 4 minutes past our scheduled allotted time, but a huge shout out to Miss Dill, Miss Eford, and Miss Park for sharing with us today. Don't forget, next week we have a Teacher Clarity live session where we can kind of share some ideas and some strategies and learn a little bit more about Teacher Clarity. And we also have that module in the Canvas courses that you can dig into and learn a little bit more about Teacher Clarity. If you still got some questions or you want to know a little bit more about the research, etc., jump in there and check it out. We've got some really great resources in there identifying Teacher Clarity. And if not, we will see you either next week for our live event or 2 weeks for our innovation showcase. Our next topic is engagement, and it's going to be great because I'm working on that module. All right, have a good Friday, everyone.